but ladies and gentlemen, we have Cliffside. We have JD and Order of the Dent. And honestly, I feel like this is going to be a very spawn-dependent game. Guys, let's hop on it. So, Myriad, take me through this matchup. We have Louis, who is a seasoned Chad veteran of a very aggressive player. He can play late game, he can play aggressive, he does everything he needs to do. And VortiX, who is a known boy who can kill you in 10 minutes. How are we feeling about this matchup in general?
This is not one we see very commonly, I would say, right? It's interesting to see it here. I do actually have the stats for these two players in the head-to-head on Liquidpedia here, and it seems like we have a very, very even series on our hands coming up. Pretty 50% win rate one against the other so far in 2024, so it doesn't exactly get any closer than that, does it? I think the last time these two met was in El Renado qualifiers. Not qualifiers, but in the group stages, I believe. And VortiX did win that one 3-2 in a very, very tight series. Now, regarding the matchup, I mean, it's very difficult to call. I know some people believe John Dark is favored, some people believe Order of the Dragon is favored. So, when opinions are mixed in that way, it's always bound to be a very, very good game. So I'm quite curious to see what we're going to see. Pro scouting is most likely going to be on the cards, likely for both players here. And the day will be quite a determining factor as to who gets the lead in the early game. But of course, a lead in the early game doesn't necessarily mean that the game goes towards that player. So the way it unfolds is yet to be seen.
Now, when I think of this matchup in general, it always comes to question when you see JD, is it going to be just like French? How do we play this out? And usually what we see with French is obviously we see that fawn gold usually. And with JD right now, smelling it a little bit different. With French, we always see an opening of the night into pro scouts. Is it the same for JD right now? Or what is the current feeling that we have over here? Because there's no mill that has been dropped here for VortiX. And I don't know about you, but that's a scary position for me. Because if I have 8 on food, I know I'm getting enough for my night. But am I thinking about pro scouts already, or is this like one of those transitional pro scouting builds that we'll be seeing?
You're right, there's no mill dropped yet. Part of me thinks that VortiX might want to maximize the XP on Jean and build the mill with her, because as we can see, we are now at 100 gold, so the knight is queued up, and until he gets the gold, that will be enough time for, and that's exactly what we see here, right? It makes complete sense, so this is nice, very good efficiency by VortiX being displayed here. And barracks from LoueMT on Order of the Dragon, and it seems like they will most likely pro scouts on the card for him as well. 300 gold now banked up, and yep, it is in queue for him now too. But opening with the barracks instead here, which I think is a pretty prudent choice. I mean, with the knight on the field and now a second one in queue for VortiX, that barracks will pay extra dividends this time round, right? And it's interesting with the OTD spearman, because naturally they're so much stronger than the regular spearman. So very, very scary for one knight to be caught by one, but in turn what that also means is that it's much more difficult to spread the spears across the day pack. So, if 3 knights end up finding one OTD spearman out of position, then that's a tough fight for even the spearman to take, right? But the 2 knight will delay VortiX's professional scouts in this case. However, it might pay dividends if he's able to get a raid or 2.
With Order of the Dragon, I always think of the problem of just not being able to split your units as effectively because you're fighting in more places at the same time, especially when you get to raiding civilizations. Now, this knight, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to find any easy damage. You can see he has rallied him on top of gold to try and shut down anything that Louis might be cooking. But Louis is cooking a barrack, so he's not too worried about the gold just yet. He did get all the gold he needed to be able to get his spearmen out and get his professional scouts. So he's probably pretty happy with this, but VortiX now, he wants to find ways to shut down anything that Louis can do. We do have 1 scout for Louis. Professional scouts done. But now Horseman being the choice here. And my question to you is Horseman the natural choice against JD, especially when she's in a ranged form?
Horseman will certainly do very, very well against JD in ranged form. especially with no space from VortiX to protect them. I mean, sure, you generally do not need any space in most matchups as JD or Rus or French for that matter, specifically because you have access to these superior knights in the feudal age that other civs do not. Even against OTD, that might potentially be the case, but, you know, I mean, this is a classic scenario here, right? We have Archer JD, accompanied by knights, and then we have full melee in the form of spearmen and horsemen from Louis. Historically speaking, this sort of comp matchup, I mean, there's no archers yet from JD, but that was potentially soon to follow. This is a case where in small skirmishes like this, the melee comp is generally favored, and we see the engagement happening just now. Horseman beeline straight towards the JD, and already half health from just a few spear pokes and the horseman, and now quickly the health is dropping. Only one more poke left, I think, from the few spearmen. And yeah, JD's 100% going to die here. Out of position, she gets caught out, and there we go, she dies. And that's the problem with range JD here, and I find it a slightly curious choice. I mean, I understand it somewhat because the divine arrow from JD is quite good against these, the OTD's stronger, less numerous units, but the issue is that she's so squishy.
Now, the best part for me is we see Twitch chat asking if Tau and Louis' gold is not worth it. Yes, it is, he says, actually. He just wanted to wait for us to allow him to get to that position, making sure that he invested in only what he needed. And what I want to point out to you guys is, with all the JD shenanigans happening, VortiX was still able to pick up most of the deer from this pack. And this is considered to be Louis' pack, I would say, because of where it is on the map here. And with these guys over here, they're still fully stacked, and VortiX is going to be able to get a lot of them quite freely, especially considering he does have free scouts. And now, he does have that type of aggression following at the back here, but the spearman at the ready, he is not able to pick up any kills. And these villagers, they don't die like our usual villagers. We've all lost villagers to knights, but Order of the Den villagers, they take a little bit more of a punch. And it does look like VortiX bought her back, though. Pretty quickly, he realized, hey, I need that experience on her no matter what.
That he definitely did, which is a bold choice so early on. Normally, in these early stages with JD, you don't really typically buy her back so early, but we know how valuable that experience is, especially against such strong units like OTD has. But Louis is wasting no time, right? Killing JD is the only incentive he needed to tower that gold, drop a bunch of villagers on there, and start trending towards that castle age. He feels confident that he can get away with this so early. And with so many spearmen, that might be the case. Archers are, however, now out on the field for VortiX's JD, but as to whether he can get any damage done here, it will be pretty difficult. I mean, you have a small wood line as well as the tower protecting that gold. It will be tough here to dive without any undermesh. See a small little skirmish potentially happening here. Realistically, VortiX is not going to be able to achieve too much more than some idle time here. One spearman does go down to the divine arrow, so that's a nice plus 16 experience points for JD here, so definitely value gain there, but still more and more units in production here for VortiX, whilst collecting now his own safety packs behind this, and no surprises here, Burgrave now on the way for Louis.
Now, the problem is here, it's not just about Louis getting idled. We also have to consider that this means that Louis doesn't have any gold. Louis is not going to be able to go from this and be like, hey, I'm going to sit back, relax, and get a bunch of units on my burger. My burger is going to be idle for a while, because these guys, they need to find gold, and they need to find it quickly. Luckily, emergency repairs, they are going to be able to make this game quite fun as an emergency repair enjoyer. I'm very biased, and you can see he realizes I need this gold to work. I'm going to make it happen. So that's exactly what he does. He tries to get his emplacement, just enough stone for that, and will queue that up pretty quickly, I was about to say, but no. He actually is waiting to get enough stone to get the Springald emplacement, or to just get the fortification instead. JD does need to use her heal, as she does take a lot of fire shots here, but Louis is just not able to get any of the upgrades just yet. Not the end of the world, though. He's just going to be pumping out a lot more spears from this burger.
The tough situation here for VortiX is, sure, this gold is in fact denied at the current stage in the game, but realistically speaking, all Louis needs to actually push this back is more horsemen and more spearmen, neither of which actually cost any gold for him. And I mean, now with the spring golden placement coming in, emergency repairs is soon to be off cooldown again. JG did use her heal, so she has to be very, very careful now about extending further. And one horseman might be able to finish her off. Knight's getting good damage on the spears, but spearman is not exactly what they want to fight. JD falls once again. However, the trade is not looking too bad for VortiX here. But, you know, these units are now dying for Louis with no XP gain for Jean because she is in fact dead right now, and more stone being long distance gathered here for Louis. He's going to look to fortify that tower as well, maybe even drop a second one soon enough. But, I mean, this is a tough spot now for VortiX, right? He's still stuck in the feudal age. He is trending towards that castle age now, but he's going to be slightly delayed here, and he has some military to work with, but, yeah. The issue is, once those prelates start coming out from Louis and relics are being gathered too, now feeling confident enough to move on to the berries, it might be difficult for VortiX to not lose too much map control in the forthcoming minutes.
And it feels like with Order of the Dragon, you like to be in this position. You like to be very close in villages in this case, because we know that they're slightly better, and that's exactly where he's sitting at. He hasn't lost anything. He's lost idle time, but he knows it might be worth it. Now, with the Royal Institute, the previous game we casted, we saw that with 6 knights, Beastie opted to go for his guild hall. He's like, we can play the late game, we can play the early game, I don't care. But the Royal Institute VortiX says, I am going to kill you, and I'm going to kill you soon. So the thing is, does he have enough gold for this? He says yes, tries to get every ounce of it, and the back gold also will allow him to be able to do that, but there is a little surprise waiting for him here at the back, so he does need to be careful with this.
Royal Institute is a slightly curious choice here for VortiX, with only 6 knights on the field, more in queue now, and so many spearmen out for Louis. I mean, I do understand it with how much deer he has collected. He does have a deer advantage over Louis, I believe. And I understand the sentiment somewhat. You don't exactly want to go too late in the game against Order of the Dragon, which is typically the type of playstyle you go for when going for the guild hall. So I understand the sentiment behind Royal Institute here somewhat, but getting the full value here from Royal Bloodlines and potentially later on crossbow stirrups for the Arbaletria, if we do see him going into that, might prove more difficult than he expects. But Louis is now suffering from food issues, as we can see, going on to his starting berries, as one or two villages will end up going down here, and also berries at the back that are somewhat exposed if VortiX does decide to raid there. The food is going to become a problem for Louis soon enough, because, you know, there's not a single farm on the field under that Achel influence just yet. A lot of stone being gathered by Louis, likely for more towers, and this is something that is very, very common for Louis to do. He does love getting towers and emplacements on them to defend various pocket economies, and the prelate does go down. The relic is pretty much secured in the base, but VortiX can't dive much deeper just yet.
But he shut down both of them, and that is actually so big because it's just delaying him and forcing his opponent to spend more gold on things that he probably doesn't want to be focused on right now. He probably doesn't want to spend any more gold on getting prelates and instead focus on getting those chunky units even chunkier. And now he had a lot of idle time under this TCU. There's no farm transition even close to this, but one thing we have been seeing from Order of the Dragon is that second TC. Now, I feel like that would be so risky here. The towers that you mentioned would probably be the safest choice he could do. And I'm wondering to see where he is going to be moving with this. He does send the prelate over to his tower that's already upgraded. Realizes my villages are not in a prime position yet. I do need to move them to a safer place. The horses are going to be able to pick off a few stray units, trying to find some damage. But he needs to find a way to get emplacements, and that's exactly what he does. Another tower getting upgraded. We just need to see, probably over here, yes. They do get emplaced over here, and another relic coming from the side now. So 3 going over to Louis. But keep in mind, this is just a burger. It's not a Regnus. So he does just get the normal value from those relics.
You can see just how aggressively VortiX was butchering in this situation. He smells blood after those villager kills and killing those prelates. He's looking for angles here to enter Louis' base, but as we know, the uniquely cheap emplacements and relic boosted towers that OTD and both HRE have access to make it very difficult to take any kind of favorable engagement within their home territory here. So VortiX has to be very, very careful about how deep he pushes in here. You know, the Sprinkle Towers do so much damage with the relic, and they also have so much range and vision, alerting Louis to any threat coming his way. VortiX finding an angle here with only a few spares there, putting the wood line out of commission once again briefly, as you know, his starting right side wood line is completely unavailable to him at this point in time. Not exactly the place he wants to be in, because the Aachen is there as well. And you're right, Marika, it seems 2TC is on the way now for LoueMT. A very greedy, very, very, very greedy move here, especially it's about to be exposed. Louis does see VortiX's army approaching, but VortiX knows as well what just went on. The Knights curiously do stop just shy. He might just have been focusing on other things at that point in time, but there are so many villagers walking, trying to run for their lives at this point in time, and there are a lot of spares here for LoueMT, but the archer numbers are also mounting. Now, Steeled Arrow level 2 now, +2 damage on the archers is also in, so the spears will need a bit of backup if they are to even defend in this position. JD almost falls again, very good focus fire from the tower, LoueMT, and JD does fall once again. She's still not quite close to leveling up just yet. A few Gilded Knights here helping to frontline for those spears and push back VortiX's mass, but there are so many Knights here on the field. This is quite the fight to take here for VortiX. There is no JD on the field, so any XP gained here will be completely wasted. However, this might be his time to strike, knowing that Louis is angling for this kind of greedy play with the 2TC. The Sprinkle Tower is gaining a lot of value at this point in time. Realistically, VortiX is not going to be able to break this anytime soon without any kind of siege, but all of this is very valuable idle time. You see more and more villagers running around for Louis. So many villagers going to those berries. No more wood, left in the bank for Louis to drop that second TC on. Oh, VortiX finds it. 5 villagers almost defenseless within that tower. I'm not sure Louis has enough mass here to actually contest this, Marika.
It does look like this tower will stay up for a little while longer as he does get the fortification. I think he maybe overestimated the ability of this tower, not knowing that it doesn't get repaired right now, and instead backs off, leaving it alive but now reinforced. The knight here at the back cleaning up quite a few villagers himself, but this is still 5 villagers that are sitting ducks right now. And we can see with these knights, he's trying his best to do some damage, but they're just going down. Luckily for him, JD is not here to make this even harder. He realizes, I need to engage this, otherwise I am going to lose 5 villagers, and those 5 villagers are so valuable to him right now. He has abandoned that idea of the second TC for now. The villager count is so important for him, but as we can see, Louis has killed quite a few, and he's pretty happy with that pickup, but this is a very risky spot to be in. And those villagers are, again, sitting ducks, so he needs to make sure that he takes out as much army as possible. Although the value of those villagers, and they do start running out, it doesn't look like VortiX is paying too much attention there because his eyes are focused over here on the Knights trying to find more damage here at the front. Now keep in mind, these are Royal Knights, but they don't have all those spicy upgrades that we usually see from them coming from the Royal Institute, which honestly, I'm pretty surprised about.
Yes, no Royal Bloodlines in queue just yet. It doesn't even look on the horizon. There is some gold being banked up now. It might be the next upgrade that he looks to go for. I do understand the delay somewhat. I mean, it's such an expensive upgrade to get, right? It's difficult to slot that in without stopping Knight production here and there, and, you know, it could be argued whether it's even worth it to cut Knight production in order to get it. But you can see exactly what VortiX is known here, being showcased by him. This unrelenting pressure, not giving Louis any single second to breathe in this game, pressurizing the berries, pressurizing the woodline, non-stop aggression here, and Louis' army is only further and further dwindling in numbers. 43 military pop to 9, 5 now, and dropping steadily. So many villagers running for their lives, left, right, and center, but Louis knows it. It's just too much, as GG is called, with VortiX taking game number 1 on Cliffside.
Louis looked very strong there for a moment. Honestly, I thought Louis was going to sit back and relax and just order the dragon out with all his towers, but I feel like at some point, the tower pressure just wasn't enough, just because of the pure mass that VortiX was able to push out. So with this now, it definitely puts VortiX in the light of, I'm aggressive, I'm not going to let you sit in your base. And Louis loves to do that. We saw this yesterday in Louis' games as well. Louis was very happy, extending the game, and then overwhelming his opponents. It was actually quite a different side to what we see usually from him. So Louis definitely needs to be sure that he doesn't underestimate the power of a VortiX push, because that felt like he underestimated what VortiX was about to do to him.
But this is just classic VortiX, isn't it? Lately, we have seen him vary up his playstyle a little bit more than beforehand. Typically, he is known as this ultra-aggressive, unrelenting player, never taking his foot off the gas, not giving opponents any room to breathe whatsoever. However, he has changed that up recently somewhat, but in this game, he's going back and showing exactly what he has been known for. And once again, Louis being put on the back foot quite early on in that game with those 2 villager kills that have dropped, and ultimately, once again, VortiX not taking his foot off the pedal, not even for a second that game, circling around Louis' base constantly like a shark until Louis had just nothing left.
Yeah, Louis has to understand that VortiX is not going to let him play his game that he got to play yesterday. He needs to make sure that he's aggressive and he can go beastie, putting his face in there, wanting to say hi to the stream. He's like, we don't have enough action over there. I need to see what's going on here. And guys, we are ready for the next one. But this is going to be an Order of the Dent versus Byzantines. And we did see Byzantines on Lakeside yesterday as well. Now, Byzantines being chosen on a hybrid-ish map has been a very interesting choice for most people. As someone who's a bit of a pumper, I would classify you as. What do you feel like about choosing Byzantines on water here? Because it has not been a very famous pick up until now.
A curious pick here by Louis, without a doubt. I do understand the sentiment behind it somewhat. So, Lakeside, of course, we have seen this map a few times before now. Quite an exciting map, I would say. Presents some very entertaining games with a lot of action happening, specifically around those sacred sites in the center. However, the water is not a large focus of this map, as we have seen before, right? There's only 1 deep sea fish per side here, which sure is quite valuable, but it makes you question to what extent is it really worth investing in that navy to push the opponent or to defend your side, right? And I think that's one of the reasons Louis did decide to opt for the Byzantines here. Now, Byzantines, they can get up an extremely scary mass once that olive oil starts rolling in. And with how safe the spawns generally are on this map, you see the berries behind that wood line, the gold, as well as the wood line firmly within TC range. Very hard to harass by any kind of Dark Age or feudal pressure, which is why fast castles tend to be very common on this map. Now, I think Louis kind of expected OTD or something akin here, and I think his game plan will be to just, not worry about water too much, knowing that OTD goes pretty tough to handle early on in an extended naval fight. So I think he will not do too much to defend the water. We might see an emplacement from him in order to, extend the lifeline of his ships, and then just work towards that castle age, get those groves going, perhaps also getting those berries in the south. I'm sure he will also opt to do that. And then, in a headlong fight like that, sort of in a meat grinder, as you would call it, around those sacred sites, with longbows or javelins potentially, it's a very difficult composition to break. And when that mass starts building for Byzantines, it is something that can potentially compete against that Burgrave discount that OTD has become very known for and notorious for in recent weeks.
Now, I know that for some people you might be like, oh, this is pretty much a mirror spawn of a map. And yes, on the EGC version, it also has been reworked quite a bit. And what I wanted to point out to you guys, because I think a lot of people might not know of the interactions here. And honestly, first thing, we have 5 fishing ships. We haven't seen 5 fishing ships on this map in a while. And to me, this spells VortiX needing a lot of food very quickly. And him being very confident he's going to be winning water. So I want you guys to notice how far away this dock is from the deep sea. You can see it's almost within range, so when you do get emplacements, it does help. Well, on the other side, this one is quite a bit further, and this has been reworked on the EGC version, but because of where we are, we know exactly this is going to be the ladder version of these maps that we don't always get to enjoy. Now, why is Order of the Dragon this good? I'm going to take a snack at this, and you can correct me here, Myriad, but with Order of the Dragon, you have a very balanced and very strong economy, especially on wood with your chapel pretty early on. You get that extra bit of boost on the water too, just that your units are gathering faster. Byzantines also does have a pretty good boost here with the cistern, but at the same time, your Byzantine civilization is not known for its crazy plays on water, right? The water plays have not been too simple because we haven't seen a lot of it, and the Dromons aren't seen as one of those extra strong ships like we do with the Springholds usually. I don't exactly know why they are so much worse, according to some players, but I'm hoping Myriad will enlighten us today.
It's just the range, isn't it? I mean, Dromons have a pretty good damage once they get up close and personal to the enemy ships, but that is the issue, isn't it? The up close and personal part is the difficult place to get for those Dromons. Of course, I mean, being sprinkled ships, they're not very, well, being classed as sprinkled ships in terms of subtype, they're not very fast, right? So although they do good DPS once they get in melee range, with effective kiting, realistically, it's very difficult for them to output that DPS that they are capable of, which is why Byzantines generally does struggle on water. And on top of it, right, I mean, sure, Byzantines does get some olive oil from fish, but it's not nearly as good of a return rate as berries or olive groves. So, you know, the investment into waters for Byzantines generally tends to not be worth it as a result of it. And because of that, they tend to not be very favorable. You see right here, right? I mean, Louis is trying his best to get into range to be able to get that Greek fire going. However, it's so difficult with VortiX's effective micro and kiting. And I mean, micro is something VortiX does very well.
Now, the naval arrow slits will come out now, and it will ensure that he has the safe access to the shoreline fish, but that's not going to be too simple anyway. VortiX, like we said, he is investing on water. With investing 5 fishing ships, you know you want to get the water, and you're quite committed to this. He's invested a lot more ships than we see out of here from Louis' side, but Louis has other things in mind. As we can see now, he's got 5 on gold here with a lot of food income. So this is spelling a castle age, but I don't think he's going to be alone in this. We can see VortiX also having a similar idea right now.
And you can see, I don't expect Louis is going to be investing into any more military ships here. He's trying his best to sort of get himself back onto the deep sea fish, but you can see, unfortunately, the spawn working against him here a little bit as that dog. Just like you mentioned, Marika, it is a bit further away from that deep sea fish than he would like. I'm sure he finds that a bit frustrating at this point in time, as VortiX is investing now up to 2 sprinkled ships and a demo. But realistically, with those arrow slits, it's not going to be too easy to push into here. But as long as he does keep Louis off of that deep sea fish, he will be reasonably happy with himself. But Louis is likely to be the first to click up here, and, you know, once those relics start coming in from the monks into that winery, the olive oil begins rolling in, now gathering up his berries. We're likely going to see him going out onto the secondary berries as well once those finish. And Javelin Contract is going to be the name of the game here, which doesn't surprise me, right? I mean, historically, longbows scale very well, especially into Imperial Age once you get access to the Streltsy. However, this map doesn't tend to go to Imperial Age very often, especially with such powerful castle age civilizations like the Order of the Dragon and Byzantines. Burgrave on the way now for VortiX, as well as Goldenhorn Tower on the way for Louis. And the Javelins will be extremely useful here for Louis, because what does Order of the Dragon really like to do on maps like this? I mean, it's getting out a lot of crossbows and potentially a lot of archers as well. And I mean, what unit deals better against them than Javelins, right?
And with the barracks, he does answer to the other unit that Order of the Dragon loves to make, which are those very chonky knights and horsemen. And getting a barracks, he's just going to be able to make sure that he has those safe limit in A to make those plays with. But now, the question is just, is Louis going to be able to give up the water or just put pressure and force VortiX to split his attention? Because we know VortiX can go hard on both sides, and he is hoarding a lot of resources for this age up, instantly queuing up crossbows and going for the men-at-arms. Now, I feel like the Javelins are going to be able to deal with those pretty well, and he does go for a double dose of them. Instead of waiting for the veteran contract and getting Camel Riders instead, he does go for the double barracks as well and opts for the Varangian Guards. Now, Varangian Guards, they're probably going to be a good choice here when you're dealing with a lot of land mass, but the crossbows from Order of the Dragon just feel like they can answer to mostly anything. So I'm a little bit worried for what this looks like for Louis.
The interesting thing here to note is going to be the interaction between those OTD crossbowmen and the javelins coming out from Louis, right? Louis is going to rely on his army just being flat out stronger in a direct engagement. The Varangians don't surprise me too much. Horsemen lose some value on this map here due to, I mean, essentially the fighting area of the map on land is half of what it is on a normal map, even less so than a map like Coastal Cliffs, as we've seen in the past. Because all of the action will be centered around those sacred sites, right? They will look to get, both players will look to get those relics in ASAP, and then all the fighting will be around those sacred sites, and sacred victory is most often the way this map is decided, one way or the other. But I think the rounded comp we're going to end up seeing from Louis here will be javelins combined with Varangians, maybe some crossbows mixed in there to help offset the strength of those gilded men-at-arms from VortiX. And the tough part here for VortiX will be to deal with those javelins, because Horseman sure will be able to deal with them if he does go for them, but it will put so much pressure on his food economy in turn. And the first skirmish of the game on land is starting here, and you can see the strength of those javelins going straight for the gilded crossbowmen, and they take so much damage, almost getting one shot despite the gilded status here on the Order of the Dragon. Louis does not want to let VortiX get away with that relic scot-free as he chases ever forward here, and the mass for VortiX isn't quite there yet. I mean, the Gilded Men-at-Arms would serve quite well as a frontline here for him, but the Varangians are no slouches either, and with the Javelins focusing out the crossbows like that, this composition, I think, will favor Louis in the long run.
Yeah, the Varangians definitely took a lot of punch from these Men-at-Arms, because the Gilded Men-at-Arms, they don't do too much damage, so these guys were able to absorb quite a lot. And it does delay VortiX getting those relics himself so easily. So now we are up to 2-2 with one of the relics being left on Louis' side. He now picks that one up, but we're going to now see how this interaction is going to go. 2 more sets of longbows in queue here. And the water doesn't look to be contested just yet. The fishing ship's just vibing at the moment. These javelin throwers doing their best at doing some damage, but the men-at-arms are just a little bit faster when they do charge in. These guys will be able to back out for now, but they're dragging them towards a very vulnerable spot themselves. +2 now making a huge difference.
The Men-at-Arms numbers are building very quickly here for VortiX at quite a scary pace, really. And sure, although there's nothing too special about the Men-at-Arms for OTD without that without the mine work, excuse me, as VortiX did opt for the Arcan Chapel, they're essentially just beefed up regular Men-at-Arms. They will ultimately be a very good front line with no crossbows out for Louis. I do think Louis will probably need some crossbows here in order to be able to contest the Men-at-Arms mass as it starts building, because they end up being so cheap from that Burgrave in the long run, and so much resources saved for VortiX. Sacred Sites are now locked in for him. VortiX does find himself at a relic disadvantage here with 2 up against Louis' 3, but having the sites locked in so early is going to be good. And look at this, Mareka. Inspired Warriors on the way for VortiX as well.
Now, this was earlier something we saw in the Order of the Dragon matchup, one versus the other. Beastie favoring Inspired Warriors over getting any blacksmith upgrades, and rather just saying, let me get my Inspired Warriors, get a ton of prelates, and then I'm good to go. And the army was just so good. So we'll see now if this is going to pay off for him, as it did for Beastie in the previous game as well, even when faced in a mirror. Now, Louis is going to need to find a way to answer to this. And now with the mass of Varangians, I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to handle what VortiX has on order now. Because those crossbowmen, they are great, but their numbers are also increasing so quickly. The javelin throwers just don't feel like they're going to be able to keep up with the numbers from VortiX. Because we know they're going to take a lot of fire. Now 14 of them, but Spring Ults seems to be the answer. And now we actually get to a point where Spring Ults are starting to make sense for a lot of us. I know a lot of people were saying like, oh, are Spring Ults actually good? Are we still making them? And apparently now with the update, people are very sure about them. I just don't know how they do against a very big mass here, like the Men-at-Arms that are so chunky, and the crossbows that are very happily going to be firing at them from a range.
I'll be completely honest, Marika. This is nothing short of a purely disgusting play from Louis here. Disgusting in the sense of how effective it is with those Springolds. Springolds en masse are incredibly oppressive against the melee mass like VortiX is massing right now. It might even allow him to completely forego the need for crossbows altogether. Now, LoueMT microing very well here in this fight, sniping out those crossbows, prioritizing them over the prelates in this skirmish here. Look at him pushing way past the front line of VortiX, not caring at all, knowing that the Springald, in combination with his own Varangian guards, are going to be more than enough to handle this front line here for VortiX. And VortiX has no choice but to retreat with those crossbows because of all the damage they take. Now, the issue here for Louis will be when these berries in the south do run out, as that will result in a slowdown of his javelin production, and he might need to then potentially add crossbows as well, or some other unit potentially, in order to further boost his army, because as these javelin numbers start dropping as well, and he'll be forced to add olive groves, the composition might end up favoring VortiX here. But I mean, it's just such a mass here for Louis. Half his army is essentially free, all because of olive oil. It's just so difficult to handle, even with the extra food income that VortiX has access to here with the fishing.
But this is actually quite crazy. I feel like Louis' trade was so beautifully done here, with the Varangian gods tanking this so easily against the men-at-arms, and the javelins just straight focusing on the crossbowmen. They knew what they needed to do, but keep in mind, guys, there's a ticking time bomb here, and this is the Sacred Sites. Even though it hasn't been a huge focus of the game just yet, it does still add to this. It does give that free gold too. The javelin throwers are trying their best, but as we can see, finally the prelates are out healing quite a bit now, and he has managed to snipe another one, but this is still pretty scary. He doesn't want to be losing these Springolds either. They are expensive to make, and Gilded Men-at-Arms, they do provide that heavy pressure now, and it just doesn't feel like he has an answer to cleaning these up too quickly. Also, we're seeing behind all of this, Wheelbarrow only coming in now. This means these villagers have been running marathons to try and get resources back to base, and the farm transition is not in existence just yet. So that olive oil mass that we talked about, it's going to dry up so quickly. With the amount of javelin throwers that he needs to also snipe out these prelates, this is going to be key for him, because without those olive oil groves, he's just not going to be able to produce the mass that he needs to deal with this.
It's a scary spot for Louis to be in, right? This is what I mentioned before. The starting berries are finished, the secondary berries are finished, and there's no more berries on the map left for Louis. He now has to go through the painful transition into those olive groves if he wants to have any more consistent production of those javelin throwers. And of course, although olive groves are very good, the gather rate for olive oil from them doesn't hold a candle to the olive oil from berries, for that matter. So, whilst VortiX can keep pumping endlessly from the Burgrave Palace, and you can see 5 men-at-arms now, 11 crossbows and more in queue on the field for him, and now a horseman switch coming in as well, which I assume he's going to hide for the moment and eventually use as a complete surprise factor in order to offset those Springolds. It's going to look quite dire now for Louis. I mean, Sacred Site timer is now getting close to 5 minutes and hasn't even been contested yet at all at this point in time. The gold rolling in for VortiX is only going to increase from here on out as his economy grows. Towers being dropped by Louis now, further close to the front line, and he will need to creep up with them and use the Mangonel emplacement to offset this imbalance in army, because I mean, I just don't think he actually has enough time here to get a full olive grove transition going, and I mean, losing those villages like that is also so painful.
We can see, I'm checking back here to the map, and we're only looking from Louis' vision at the moment to see what Louis could be thinking here. The poor man, he says creeping is the only way forward, and that's really what he's trying to do. He's got his siege now, but it feels like VortiX is just so far ahead with this. 16 of these, though, should make quick work of the backline. But he needs to have vision. He needs to know what's going on, and he does. He does. The Mangonel does move forward, but on the other side, we know that VortiX also knows exactly what's cooking. And the problem is, I don't feel like Louis has anything to even deal with these towers or break them right now. He's currently just making land units to try and do what he can, but we also see some ships behind this. I'm wondering if he's going to be doing anything with these to try and provide pressure so that he can distract from what's going to be happening on the land. We see that those horsemen you talked about, very much hidden from all of this. Not wanting to give this away too soon, because he knows that those horsemen are going to be the answer to what we see at the back here with the siege, but both of the players having a very similar idea with those hidden horsemen.
Louis, however, on the other hand, you can see the level at which these players think, right? Louis smells that something is off. Already adding in Limitane behind this, he has a sense that VortiX might go for some kind of a surprise strategy here with the horsemen. Speaking of, an engagement attempt here by Louis, the horsemen are flanking around on the side, and if they find a back angle on this army, it could be devastating for Louis. Now, Louis does smell it once again because those Limitane are sitting on the back, ready to protect the siege when need be. Now, Springboards and Mangonel here are very good for Louis in this fight, but the horsemen do find an angle, and realistically, there's not enough Limitane here to actually protect this siege max. Mangonel goes down, one of the Springboards goes down, another Springboard goes down. The other two are not long for this world either. Tower being rushed up here by Louis, but there's just so many prelates, so many crossbowmen here, and the mass from Louis is getting completely cleaned up.
He realizes there was no coming back from this. I did not have the water, I did not have the land, and that sacred site timer has given me PTSD already. It's just happened and I'm already overwhelmed by it. Louis realizes VortiX is not the kind of guy who's going to let him sit in his base and get to Imperial. He's going to need to move out. And I feel like this is exactly where VortiX's strength is showing us right now, what he's very comfortable with doing. Now, keeping in mind, Louis' unfortunate little water spawn did influence a bit of that early game with the ship pressure. But in the end, I feel like the superior play from VortiX, getting that map control so quickly and making sure that he had the units to handle was so important in this. It did look a little iffy there for a moment, but he held, and with that gold income as well, he definitely recovered pretty quickly.
I must say, I really liked Louis' idea here with the Byzantines pick. I can predict exactly somewhat what he had in mind here. He wanted to use that early injection of olive oil from his starting berries, from that secondary berries, to really get a foothold in that early castle, secure the sacred sites, get himself that gold income, maybe get some mangonel towers on them, and then, ease himself through that painful olive grove transition in order to keep up the javelin numbers. And it was looking quite good for him in that early castle, taking some good trades. However, he just wasn't quite able to get those sacred sites on lockdown for him, and after that, realistically, it was an uphill battle because sure, he would be able to keep up the mass initially with the berries and the olive oil income to get those javelin numbers going, but I mean, the Burgrave, it is working overtime non-stop, right? It doesn't run out of berries just like Louis does, right? The discount is ever present, ever there, and it saves so many resources in the long run, and ultimately, as predicted, the horseman switch is what broke the camel's back, so to say, and that flank was just beautiful to completely close out the game in his favor. VortiX executing flawlessly so far.
I love that pun, considering that there were 2 camels on the field, so thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that your pun has been seen. We see you and we appreciate it. The Twitch chat, moment of silence for the pun, please.
It wasn't intentional, but thank you for mentioning it.
But it was beautiful. Now, guys, behind this, we've seen a lot of Byzantines on this map, which I'm so happy about, because it feels like now we're finally getting to see a different side of Byzantines. Even though not victorious in that last game, it did give us a little bit of insight into the fact that players are thinking that this could be a viable choice. This is not a tournament with exclusive picks where you cannot get a mirror. This is the whole point. We wanted people to have access to as many civs as possible to see what they will be playing on land. And I want you guys to take a look at that screen and see which 2 civilizations were banned on both sides. Now, Myriad, Zushi and HRE, do you think that all pros fear them at the same level?
Jushi, most definitely. Jushi, with the Pro Scouts currently, the Tang Dynasty discount on their landmarks, allowing for that early Castle Age, and then the pump of those superpowered Lancers with the Dali horses upgrading Castle makes them such a feared civilization. So I think Jushi is pretty much a unanimous ban across all, for all pros on pretty much every map pool. I think we would see them being banned, frankly. However, HRE generally tends to swap places with Rus as the second ban for most of these players. Rus and HRE are sort of the next 2 most scary civilizations. Sometimes you might see a China ban thrown in there as well. specifically because of the pure prowess that these civs have on land. They're just so versatile, so capable on almost any map where there's access to deer and where there's not any kind of special gimmicks that would enable other civs to be favored over others. So I'm not too surprised to see HRA being banned by either. The ease of their execution as well, compared to something like Rus, does mean that they might be favored as a ban over Rus in other situations, as is in this case, right?
HRE has been seen as a civilization that you can just play any type of map on and they have an answer to it. So, Rus, you do have your favorites. We don't see King of the Hill in this draft at all. So, luckily, Rus not flying away too hard for this one. But we do have Rus for this next game on Lipany. And again, not EGC Lipany, just Lipany. So, Lipany can have a wide range of spawns. And I know we've seen a lot of these crazy spawns on Ladder as well. And from what I see on my mini-map, ladies and gentlemen, it does look like we have a pretty wild situation here with our mountainous ranges. So guys, let's hop right in to our game number 3,
LoueMT spawning in the south side of the map here as the French in the color blue, whereas in the north side we have VortiX in the color red, piloting the Rus this time round. And I'm glad you mentioned it, Marika. This is the sort of classic spawn we would expect from Ladder Lipany, wouldn't be? In fact, it's not quite as extreme as I have seen some other spawns, and I'm sure others have seen as well. The cliffs are at least somewhat maneuverable here. They provide some natural walls, as was intended with the map for sure. But at least they are, somewhat reasonably traversable here, as both players look to get their scouting underway here. Nothing too crazy in the opening so far, except for Louis here. We do have a Dark Age wheelbarrow, which has been gaining popularity here for the French recently. It doesn't sit you back very much. Of course, French having that innate technology discount that is unique to their civilization and to Jeanne d'Arc as well. Being put to full use here by Louis. It has been shown that it does not delay your age up too much, and getting that in, allowing you to still get a very good timing on the Pro Scouts technology then in the feudal age, gives you a really, really nice boost to your economy.
A lot of people might not know why this is so different for French, and that's usually what we like to do over here on Age of RTS, knowing that it might not be the channel where everyone comes when they want the biggest insights. They might not understand. Why are we going for wheelbarrow this early? And Louis is getting this because purely it is cheaper. It is not that big of an investment as it is for most other civilizations. And when you're playing against Rus, it feels like you still have a little bit of a timing here. Rus is not a civilization that does super early aggression on you, so you definitely have the time to get it to pay off. And when I say the time, it means you don't need a lot of time for it to pay off, considering it is so much cheaper. Now, considering VortiX's spawn here, both of them actually have forward goals, so they are quite harassable. So we've been seeing a lot of Russes go for a little bit of a fast castle play, and those horse archers could be punishing over here very, very easily. But with these guys, I don't think VortiX is going to fall trap to anything like that. We've seen him play, we've seen him be aggressive, we've seen what he can do. But what I wanted to point out here is the deer spawns. Now, on Louis' side, he's got 2 very safe deer that are easily pick-upable. And I feel like VortiX also has that advantage of being able to slide in here and pick up deer pretty easily. Unless VortiX goes and tries to put some kind of defense. Because the natural pathing of scouts is to be able to take the straight path in there. However, if Louis wants to make an aggressive play, going for the back deer here is going to be a little bit harder to maneuver, as it might run through here at the front. So for VortiX, this is a pretty easy place for him to pick up his deer too, and they're on 2 separate spots. I feel like Louis has the ability to defend his deer a little bit easier because they are in the same spot here. And he's got the boar right there too. So actually, I feel like this could be classified as a Marine Lord spawn. If you did have a civilization who has the balls to go out on the map and do something about this food situation over here. But VortiX is not the kind of guy who will let you get all this food for free.
He certainly will not. And I mean, with these 2 civs in play here, it's very difficult to contest the deer for either side on the opposite side of the map. I mean, it's much easier for French as opposed to Rus, specifically because of that fast castle tendency that Rus tends to have in the current meta. VortiX, however, as he has shown today in the first game especially, is not a player, and historically is not a player that shies away from aggression whatsoever. So some extended feudal play from him here, perhaps with some spearmen and maybe even horsemen or knights of his own, I wouldn't count out entirely at all. In order to maybe secure himself more deer than he normally would have access to, because Louis might look to go quite aggressive with his initial knight. However, that is not going to be the case this time round, as he skips it altogether and instead goes straight for scouts and professional scouts in queue already for him. VortiX just a little bit ahead in terms of that. Makes sense due to the early wheelbarrow and that favorable trade from the first Golden Gate ticket, but acid distillation on the way for Louis as well. But this no night opener I find rather curious here, because this might mean that VortiX will be able to snatch up some of the deer on Louis' side of the map.
Now, the thing about the night opening is it does not allow you to get all these juicy little upgrades that Louis is going for, and that's exactly what he's doing. He gets specialized pick, etc. Everything that he would need to just get ahead economically and focus on getting out more scouts, which is, again, like you said, very interesting and not something we've been seeing at all. But it doesn't surprise me. You're playing against a civilization that doesn't have a lot of space to harass, and your one singular knight running into a woodline this close to the TC might not make as much sense to most people either. The thing is, like you said, the deer, it's going to make contesting the deer so much harder. And VortiX has already started the yoinking. Getting a double yoink out from the opposite side of the map is going to bode very, very well for him. Louis does take one of the boys back to base, but he now has a knight in queue. He realizes, hey, I do need to find a way to contest this, and one of these scouts could be in danger. Now, he does need to pull these boys back, and he won't be able to roam around so freely. One of them do go down on the side of VortiX, so the knight now is going to protect that, give him that little layer of protection. But the spears have already been made by VortiX, as he knows that night opening is supposed to be quite standard. Just a little bit late this time.
Yes, the lack of a night opening is rather curious here, because as I mentioned, it did allow VortiX to take some of Louis' day here, which is certainly frustrating for him, but it's something that he potentially did expect with a slightly more passive opener in this case. VortiX, of course, not missing a beat, taking full advantage of the fact that there was no early night on the field and getting himself a fair bunch of Louis' day here. I think it was either 3, maybe even 4 total of his day, which is quite a significant number. Greeding even for more here potentially, but there are 2 knights out on the field now for Louis, so he might look to stop being aggressive with them here. First denying the scout. One scout does go down, and the first knight actually falls for Louis to the spears from VortiX. That's a big, big loss so early in the game.
And VortiX is not just slowing down on this, he's just going and picking up any scout he can. Any bit of damage he sees, he takes. And this is something that's absolutely fantastic about the aggressive play here from VortiX. He's trying to move these deer out of position. Even if just moving them backwards, it makes them so much harder to shift click. Another scout going down. And Louis, having a lot of scouts at the start, now not really drowning in those anymore. It feels like VortiX, now not having all these wonderful eco upgrades, it doesn't really matter. He's just trying to shut down as much as he can. Knowing his spearmen are going to die, he's just going straight in anyway. He knows, I'm just going to do some damage. I'm going to force you to slow down even more. These scouts desperately looking for a little bit of value. Remember, Louis only having 3. This is going to mean the VortiX is very happily going to be able to go back and pick up the rest in his base as well. Shift clicking, showing its head here. These guys had to go and manually get shift clicked afterwards, and he'll be happy knowing that he got a few deer out of this trade. And not just a few deer, he's also getting his high trade house very, very happily in such a safe position as well. Easily wallable on any side, and gonna get him a chunky amount of wood in there too.
Quite an unfortunate start here for Louis in this game, I must say. I mean, losing that early night like that after opting to delay the initial one is certainly put a dent in his plans here initially, and losing those quite a few of his own side there definitely hurts here for Louis, perhaps feeling the pressure a bit of being 2-0 down in this series and 1 game away from elimination in the tournament. It can certainly do it can certainly take its toll on the mental of a player, even someone as experienced as Louis is in this case. So they might have impacted his early slip up in this game somewhat. Archer range is being dropped already for VortiX with high trade house is going to go up completely uncontested. I thought that there might be a window for Louis to potentially aggress it with the knights, but he was instead fully focused on denying as much of the deer as possible. So VortiX gets away with taking most of the deer on the map as well as getting the high trade house completely scot-free here. And I must say, this is actually pretty dire for Louis in this situation. He's getting close to Castle Age himself at this point in time, but he has less deer than VortiX, especially with the high trade house now spawning even more deer for VortiX to be able to take. And as those spear numbers and as those horse archer numbers are going to start building, Louis has to be very careful of how and when he takes these upcoming fights.
And what's crazy is VortiX hasn't touched gold. This man is just letting the horse archers do the talking, because horse archers, they are pretty cheap as far as we can see. These guys are mobile and they're going to be able to cause a little bit of havoc anywhere he like. Now, the thing about Louis is, even though he's getting ready to go for castle, as I was about to say, those expensive are going to be upgrades are going to be expensive, but with the guild hall, he's again telling us he's okay taking this game slow. And I don't think VortiX has that in mind. With the amount of units he has and the amount he's focusing into his units, it doesn't feel like he's going to go slow. It doesn't feel like the guild hall is going to provide him as many resources as he'd like, because the guild hall loves time. And I don't think Louis has the time.
Well said indeed. I mean, Louis did manage to secure at least a few of the deer from VortiX's side of the map, offsetting the deer disadvantage at least somewhat. And the guild hall, just like you mentioned, Marika, is an interesting choice here. Frankly, I really don't think French wants to end up in the late game against Roos, even potentially for someone who favors that late game fighting like Louis tends to do in most of his games. There is perhaps a chance that he went for guild hall out of pure necessity due to the lower food access that he has, less food access than he would typically like. He might not be able to get as big of a knight count as he normally would in order to make that royal bloodlines worth it. But it's tough. I mean, as I mentioned, you really don't want to end up in the late game as French against Roos, I would say, because sure, I mean, you have royal bloodlines in the late game and guild hall enables you to get there pretty healthily, but once those Streltsy come out and Roos having access to Boyar's Fortitude of their own, it's such a scary situation for French to be in, especially with an inferior economy all around compared to Roos. However, the horse archer numbers are building now. Knights do have veterancy now in the cards as they are, and they do end up behind the horse archers for VortiX, getting off a nice charge here, picking off one of them, but they can't linger for too long, as once their charge runs out, they can't realistically keep chasing the horse archers, and that's the interesting dynamic between these two units. Of course, horse archers have to stop in order to fire, as opposed to something like the Mangudai. And it's very scary for them to actually kite when the knights are charging. It's something you want to avoid doing. But when the charge is on cooldown, that is when the horse archers can actually shine and do start kiting. Now, pure archers here from Louis is going to deal quite well with the composition that VortiX is going for. Both units countered by archers en masse, of course. Wololo here to just secure the escape of this relic towards Louis' base. His own monks now on the field. Warrior monks out for VortiX as well. Is going to be a 3-2 split here in favor for VortiX. But considering the early game that Louis had, he is not going to be too unhappy with getting himself at least 2 relics.
Exactly. And even just a knight on patrol picking up 2 villagers, that is a very healthy pickup here for Louis. And that's exactly something I think you touched on quite well, is getting the guild hall was out of necessity. And that's usually something that I feel like a lot of French players do it because they're in control of the game. They're in control, they get to decide what is the pace going to be. And Louis is not in that position right now. So him with these numbers, he's going to be able to have a very chunky amount of knights, but they're not going to face up too well against these horse archers. And these horse archers, like you said, the numbers are getting more and more, and now there's horsemen coming out from VortiX. And my question to you is, why are we seeing horsemen? Is this just for the raidability? Is that to go out on the rest of the map and cause a little bit more havoc? Or why would we see horses specifically getting chosen against a very knight-heavy civilization? Or is it just to counter those archers that is in the comp as well?
Countering those archers is certainly what VortiX has in mind here, with Boyar's Fortitude now 60% of the way done for him. Getting a large mass of cavalry here is going to be very, very fruitful for him in the long run, right? I mean, the only real threat to VortiX's composition with those spears and horse archers is those archers, which Louis is massing more and more of now, up to 2 archery ranges, I believe, at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, 3, third one on the way as well here for him. So yeah, he completely understands that archers is what he needs against that comp. So horsemen as the choice for VortiX is not very surprising here. Cheap on the resources, not as expensive as knights in terms of food, or of course gold for that matter, not costing any gold, so you can afford to get upgrades behind this as well. Now Undermesh on the way, which is a crucial upgrade at this point in time. And once again, I think VortiX is going to look to hide those horsemen for as long as he can. And big raid here onto Louis' gold. Many villagers found out of position, 4 going down, 5 total in fact at this point in time, and that hurts Louis so much. More idle time on his gold. The archers were not in position to defend against those horse archers, and this really hurts.
And honestly, I didn't realize that these horse archers are also going to benefit from Boyar's Fortitude. Now being extra tanky alongside this, and all of a sudden, I feel a little bit of anxiety and understanding as to why these guys have been poisoning my rank games for ages. Now, Myriad, and this is why I'm so thankful you get to explain these things, because getting a horse army now with Boyar's Fortitude seems so powerful, and I don't know if Louis has any answer to this. If you're in Louis' shoes right now, what do you do?
It's a bit of a situation of being stuck between a rock and a hard place here, because, I mean, what do you, in fact, do as Louis in this situation? VortiX understands that French tends to not go for spears, and I mean, really, do they even have a choice in that matter? Because the keep influence only counts for stables and archery ranges. That is the comp that French almost in a way has to go for. Adding spears just feels so cost ineffective for them, as another raid onto the back. Right as the berries finish for Louis, another villager goes down for him. Now, he is leading villagers here thanks to that French villager production speed bonus that is innate to the civilization. So, you know, at least that will be helpful for him in the short run here, but the mass only keeps building for VortiX here. Arbaletry are now on the field as well for Louis, but with so many horse archers, so many horsemen, and spearmen as well to pad that front line in order to allow those knights to make it so that those knights don't just run around for free dealing damage. It's only going to become harder and harder here for Louis. At least the keep is up in order to protect his base, but this is not a fight that he wants to take right now, as the back line for Louis is completely exposed. Realistically, the knights just can't really protect them here because of the presence of the spears. Now, the keep is going to slow down the push from VortiX here and will require siege in order to be dealt with, but I mean, VortiX is just running in every direction. Horsemen diving onto the woodline as well. Several villagers going down, up to 10 villager kills now. Louis is raiding behind this with a few knights, but with second TC now on the way for VortiX as well, and the economy booming for him compared to Louis in this case. The villager count is in fact evened up now. VortiX, in fact, 2 villages ahead now. The horsemen are still causing havoc. We just went from 5 villager kills to 17 in the space of 1 minute, Marika.
The problem now is replacing those villagers. Your French production bonus might be great, right? But it's not great when you don't have the food for it. Look at our food per minute, and our food per minute for French is not something that changes very quickly. So you're not going to be able to do that farm transition at any point. And you do have your high trade house here for Roos that does provide that little bit of constant income here for him at the back. He's got 26 on food right now. This man is hungry. And like you said, that second TC is going to be a distraction to make sure that he gets ahead even more. He doesn't mind throwing these units into the meat grinder. We can see he's just queuing up everything. And the horse archers are very happily taking these trades because he knows he's got Louis in his base, and Louis has very limited resources in this base. There is a pretty solid gold vein here at the back, so he has taken this fight several times on the way there, but it just feels like his replacement rate is going to be so much better. Louis now down to 33 food per minute. It does feel like he has he cashed out his guild hall. He has. The guild hall came in clutch so that he can try and make more archers here, as he feels like this is probably his only shot. And my question is just, with VortiX seeing that this man is going for archers and archers alone, do we also get a few knights into this mix? Or are we just going to keep going for our horsemen and overwhelm with our very mobile units. Oh, the horsies, they're looking for more damage.
Knights might potentially be the question here for VortiX. The issue for him, as well as Louis right now, is going to be that food, right? I mean, Lipany, the nice thing with Lipany for a lot of civs is the fact that there are additional berries on this map as opposed to something like Dry Arabia, of course, so that can delay your farm transition a bit more than on other maps, allowing you to pump more of these numbers. Now, Knights is not something we typically see added sort of in the mid-castle age, as we see now, because specifically because they are very heavy on that food. So until the full farm transition is done and VortiX has an even bigger lead secured, I don't think we'll be seeing Knights. But realistically, will he even need them? As now he even feels comfortable enough to aggress further with horse archers and horsemen, even fighting under the keep here a little bit whilst raiding again on the gold behind this, even more villager kills. And I mean, it's just looking worse and worse for Louis in this situation. Not only being behind in villages as the French on 1 TC up against 2, but being forced to cash out his guild hall way earlier than he would like, purely for the sake of being able to mass enough to survive in this situation, as even horse archers are now comfortable enough to take a direct fight up against archers now, the direct counter. And I mean, 17 food in the bank here for Louis, 0 food income per minute. What do you do?
I mean, this one horseman is also just running amok, making sure that he sees exactly what these villagers are doing. These boys now going straight for the berry bushes, hopefully getting something done. But like you said, he's just not able to replace because there's no food. He's got 1 night in production, has given up on, I'm assuming, villager production behind this as well. Yeah, no more vills being made right now. There's no food to feed the economy. There is only food to feed the army. And 6 knights now being his only bit of food he has. We see the villagers dropping as much. And the moment the food gets dropped, more archers get queued. It just feels like these horse archers are doing so much work. You see a unit like the horse archers and the horsemen going up against something like knights that is usually so scary to fight against. And they're just happily taking these trades. VortiX getting ahead economically, making sure that his farm transition is happening. That second TC is ticking. And now, sacred sites are following as well.
And with the sacred sites, although it looks like VortiX is 62 villagers to 50 at this point in time, realistically, with 3 sacred sites soon to be locked in, each of those sacred sites at this point in time is an additional 2 extra villages in terms of raw gold income. So, you know, combined with the relics, that's more like, 70, even slightly more of an economic lead here for VortiX in this matchup. And you can see there's a slight lull here in terms of units for both sides, specifically as they look to get that farm transition going, the both of them. But, I mean, one player is way ahead of the other in terms of that, as we can see, because, I mean, with such a lead that VortiX has built, Sacred Victory approaching now, and although realistically we're not exactly going to see a Sacred Victory, just the sheer gold income combined with the passive gold income from the High Trade House, the bounty from the hunting cabins, as well as the relics. I mean, I'd be surprised if VortiX has any on gold, but you can see
0.
almost, yep, almost 800 gold per minute purely passively is just absolutely insane. He's floating it, Mareka. He can't spend it fast enough.
Well, he doesn't need to make any gold units. Apparently, this is a civilization that relies only on wood units, and that's exactly what he's doing. So him being able to spend those things purely on upgrades. Now, ladies and gentlemen, getting upgrades, they're great, but this man has no space for any more. I feel like with this high trade house, the Golden Gate, apologies, he's just able to use that gold to get what he needs here. We can see 300 food per minute. He's using it to buy food of all things, and he's just relaxing right now. He's just saying, I'm just going to keep making units. Look at all my units. I'm going to make more, dry you out. And the farm transition finally now, starting for Louis, just feels like it's very late. The thing is, it's again, not late because of any mistakes. It's just because he didn't have a choice at this point. Louis trying to get all of his units together to try and take a very big fight that he might be favored in, knowing that he has knights and there's no direct counter to those knights in the composition of Louis. But I don't know if VortiX is going to commit to this so easily. He's now on the sacred sites again. He doesn't need to worry about this. He just needs to keep trading and make sure that he gets ahead. Spasskaya Tower gets chosen as well. And let's go see. A little bit of a forward Spasskaya. This is what I would call a very cheeky Spasskaya.
VortiX dishing out just heavy punishment in this game, showcasing exactly why Rus is a civilization that is so often banned and so feared in these tournament games, right? I mean, with the combination of that passive golden gun combined with the golden gate, just like you mentioned, he has unlimited gold that he doesn't even need to mine, which he can just repeatedly keep buying food with at a favorable rate, I might add, compared to a market, further extending his food lead and delaying the farm transition as needed. Just means that it's such a powerhouse of an economy compared to the French in this situation. And Louis is doing a decent job, at least here, trying his best to contest this army mass and stop. But just like you mentioned, with the Spasskaya now up, it's only a matter of time. So many horsemen boosted by the warrior's blessing from the warrior monks going onto the rage mass. But what he realizes, almost playing with his food, not even going in directly. But yeah, I mean, the writing's on the wall. What is Louis going to do as VortiX takes the set incredibly convincingly, taking game number 3 and winning 3-0 up against LoueMT?
Yeah, the fact that VortiX has gone 3-0 against Louis is probably one of the bigger shocks that we've seen in a while.